Hi, I'm Maddie Carr. I'm a 2L here at Colorado Law. Nice to see some familiar faces. And I'm happy to welcome you here for our fireside chat with Alan Davidson, the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information at NTIA, and Anna Gomez, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of NTIA. Anna, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Maddie. Hi, everybody. I am delighted to have the opportunity to be here to speak with Administrator Alan Davidson. We only have a brief moment, so I'm not going to go through his whole bio. It is online. But I should point out, for purposes of this conversation, that he has extensive experience with internet policy, and of course, currently helms NTIA, who is the principal advisor to the president on communications and information policy, which of course includes internet policy.
Extensive experience sounds old, but it's great to be here with you, a former deputy administrator, and current State Department employee. Congratulations.
Thank you, appreciate it. Well, let's get started. As I mentioned, you have this extensive experience. Yeah. You have a robust and impressive resume in tech, having served in industry and government, in academia, in the Biden and Obama administrations. So we've been listening all day, almost a depressive litany of where we are with the internet, our middle life crisis, supposed middle life crisis. What has amazed you about the evolution and development of the internet?
That is a great question. There are some things that have been amazing, things that have been surprising, maybe some things that leave me a little hopeful still, even after a full day like this. And thank you. It's great. It is really great to be here. And I think in the category of what's been amazing, I do think so. I started in this space at the Center for Democracy and Technology back in 1995. And when I started there were 40 million people on the internet. And now we have 5 billion people. And I think what is pretty hard to, it would have been hard to imagine back then, but our dreams came true in a lot of ways, right? That the internet has become the essential communications medium of our time. And I think back then, we hoped it would be true, we dreamed it might be true, but that is a pretty amazing thing that we have created this network of networks really, and it has taken off. And it is now the thing that so many people use to stay connected, to get information, to stay in touch with their loved ones. So that is amazing. And I have to say there's a lot of moments as a fallen computer scientist where I stop and say, like, this is incredible. Like, we're doing high quality streaming video conferences from our homes. We're doing, we're carrying around these supercomputers in our pockets. And I do think that relative to where we were in the mid-90s, that is amazing. I mean, there are some things that have been surprising, including the fact that I think we've been slow to figure out some of these hard problems, which we'll talk about, I guess, and we've been talking about all day here. But I come away still pretty optimistic about where we're going, in part because we have gatherings like this and a lot of young people who care about these issues.
So what would you say we could do better or differently?
There's probably a lot, right? And I think that I would say probably 3 things that jump to mind for me. The first is we really have to finish taking on some of the big issues that we've not tackled yet. And what I mean by that is there's issues like privacy, cybersecurity, what are we doing about harmful content, all the conversation in the last panel, competition. There's a whole litany of issues that honestly we need to do a better job in government of taking on. We're trying to do our part at NTIA, but that's a big one. 2 other quick things that I think jump to mind. One is, we should be a little bit more engaged in thinking about what is the technology that we're building and deploying. I think that's been an undercurrent here. Certainly Senator Bennett talked about it. Policymakers tend to take technology as a given, but actually the internet that we have today is a product of a series of choices about what those standards would look like, what kind of network we would build. Even the services we use, those are choices made by companies sometimes, by government sometimes, a complex system, but being more engaged in not letting technology but be somnambulant, as like that we're not somnambulant as to technology is a term that people use. Like We don't sleepwalk through it. We engage in how technology is built. And then the last thing is I think we need a lot more capacity in government to tackle these hard problems. And that's going to be a big ongoing thing for us. And we're trying to build that capacity at NTIA.
And I was going to ask you, what is NTIA's role then in
Right.
all of these issues that you've talked about?
So you said it right at the beginning. You remember it well. Anna was a very distinguished deputy administrator from the early years in the Obama administration. Our role is primarily to serve as the principal advisor to the president on telecommunications and information policy. And in that role, we have a chance to be, to think about what policy ought to look like. So we're not a regulator. We're not the FTC. We're not the FCC. We don't set the rules. But we are charged with helping think about policy. So not just what the law says today, but what the law ought to say. And so we've had the opportunity to engage. We get a lot of requests. We engage with Congress about laws that are on the books or potentially on the books, as bills that are being introduced. We consult with the White House on the policies that it's setting. We have a lot of tools in our toolbox. We write reports, we do consultations, we convene around these issues, and I think those are the things where we expect to engage.
And you just recently issued a report that came out of one of these processes.
Yeah, so we've, these are two good examples of the kinds of things that we do at NTIA, and I hope we'll do more of. One is a report that we just released on mobile app competition. So for those who missed it, it just came out this week, and it's a good read. And certainly the executive summary is an easy read. And I see Tim Wu here. He was, I think I can say he's a co-conspirator in this process. We were given a homework assignment in the executive order on competition that the White House put out in 2021. It asked us to do a report on competition in the mobile app ecosystem. And what the report basically finds is that there are real problems with competition in mobile apps. This is not surprising for you all. That really two firms control the way that most of us get the apps on our phones. And because of that, there are higher prices for consumers and less innovation in the space. And we have a series of recommendations that we put out about what most of them would require action by either legislators or enforcers, but to give consumers more control of the apps that they have on their phone, to give developers more opportunity to reach consumers. And we think those are really important. We know that the Europeans are looking at those as well. So that's an example of the kind of work we're doing, and I'd like us to do more because we need that kind of engagement on these hard issues. We also just released a request for comment on privacy, equity, and civil rights. This is another example of work that we're doing where we feel there's a lot that needs to be done on privacy, but the civil rights and equity angles on privacy are something that need extra attention, and we're doing a request for comment. We'll ultimately write a report on that.
And what are some of those civil rights and equity angles?
Well, I think one of the things that we've seen, and this will again not be a surprise to many of you, but we did a series of listening sessions about a year ago with different vulnerable communities, minority communities, about their experiences of privacy and security. And one of the things that's really clear is that these privacy and the harms that come from privacy and security risks are often most starkly felt and most highly impactful on these vulnerable communities, on minority communities, the elderly, the poor, and that, you know, some of the practices that are out there already that we've seen, digital redlining, the bias in artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, are having these kinds of outsized impacts on those communities. So I'm quite excited to be able to launch that project. I think it's going to be really impactful. It fits with what the administration is trying to make us, the way that we're trying to make equity a centerpiece of all of our work. And stay tuned for more. I hope people will contribute to the request for comments, and look forward to putting a report out on that.
Yeah, I was going to point out that the Biden administration has put a particular emphasis on advancing equity and supporting underserved communities. What other ways is NTIA addressing equity in the internet policy arena?
Well, probably the biggest thing that we're doing, and that is totally true, and I will say, if anybody who's met our Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, would be able to tell you she cares a lot about these issues of equity and gender equity. Our Deputy Secretary, Don Graves, who probably, I don't know if is the first person of color to be our Deputy Secretary, but he's deeply engaged on these issues, and it's a part of everything we do. Probably the biggest thing we're doing right now is in broadband, where we're really talking about making sure that we reach everyone with high-speed, reliable, affordable internet service. And we're investing huge amounts in digital equity. We have a $3 billion digital equity fund. That's probably more money that's been spent than being spent on digital equity in the coming years than has been spent in the history of us talking about digital equity, certainly by government. And so leaning into that work, I consider it sort of the beating heart of our broadband work, is a big piece of it, as well as this work on privacy.
And another way that you are engaged is you also advocate before the FCC.
Right.
So the FCC's had...
Good reminder. Yes, thank you. We do that too, yes.
And the FCC's put out for comment
Right.
questions about digital discrimination.
Yes.
And I believe I'm right that NTIA filed comments in that proceeding.
I believe so. I'm looking at Russ Hanser, who's here, and he's giving me the nod. He's head of our policy development shop and a good person for you all to know as well. Newly the head of our policy development shop.
Congratulations, Russ.
Yes. For the folks online, he says, we have filed some comments and we will be filing more in the near future.
Well, we just recently saw the international panel, the discussion about what's happening across the pond. And international plays a significant role in where we are on internet and internet policies. This gives me a nice opportunity to give a shout out to Doreen Bogdan, who you supported and won the election for ITU Secretary General and is the first woman to be elected Secretary General in the ITU's 157-year history.
Crazy.
Cheers
great.
to her.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for the United States and for our engagement going forward that Doreen is the head of the ITU?
This was actually a legitimate big deal. The election of Doreen Bogdan-Martin was hugely important for our international agenda. And starts by saying, you know, what happens at the ITU is actually quite important for our international agenda. And I think there was a stark choice in the election for the next Secretary General. On the one hand was a Russian candidate, former Huawei executive, somebody who was really, I think, would have promoted a much more closed vision of what the internet could be and the ITU's role in the internet. On the other hand, Doreen Bogdan-Martin, an NTIA alum, I should say also, yes. As well as a historic candidate and somebody who's had a huge amount of experience at the ITU and 20 years really working at the ITU and working on development, particularly making sure that the internet reaches everybody around the world. And you know, in the end, we put a huge amount of energy, and I have to say, as a federal government, to try and make sure that Doreen got elected. It was, I think, 139 to 25 was the final vote. It was like a goosebump moment in the room. I was there in Bucharest when she was elected, and I think for a lot of reasons. First of all, I mean, I think it was a huge statement of support for this democratic vision and development-oriented vision of the ITU's future. But also, I think for a lot of people to see that glass ceiling broken and to see finally a historic pick like that was extremely important. So it was great to be able to be there and to be part of that. Yes, seriously. And Doreen is amazing, and
yes.
She's going to be an incredible leader for the ITU.
Yeah, it was definitely a wonderful moment, I agree. But some countries have argued for national sovereignty when it comes to internet governance and for more direct involvement by the ITU. Is there a role for international organizations in internet governance?
There absolutely is, but we need to be thinking carefully about what that role should be and how we keep it appropriately cabined, as it were. As a starting point, you know, the U.S. government continues to be a major believer in the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. It's been incredibly successful in many forums. It's still the right way for us to manage a lot of the key resources, the standards and protocols that underlie the internet, the ICANN system, the domain name system and numbering system, and we still believe quite a bit in that. That said, of course, there is going to be a governance role for nation states, for international organizations. The ITU, Doreen has set forth a pretty important agenda around development, around investment. I think we'll see other places where it's important for us to be coming together, and we're highly engaged. The TTC, the Quad, the ASEAN, there's a lot of international fora where you see the United States engaged at the UN, at other places, engaged on standards where appropriate, thinking about promoting our common vision that we see of a free, open, reliable, trusted, and accessible internet for all. And we have pushed the Declaration for the Future of the Internet as an important tool in getting countries to sign up for that vision as well. So there is a role. We just need to make sure that we're calling it out when, for example, some countries try to use organizations like the ITU to overstep and promote a very different vision of the internet.
So we should turn to broadband because that's kind of a big thing that NTIA is doing. I like to say the reward for good work is more work.
Right.
And you got that by a huge amount. You've been given upwards of $50 billion in new grant programs this year, including those under the Internet for All and the Innovation Fund initiatives. How are they doing?
Well, they're doing well. Let's start. I will say it's a historic, it's a really historic moment at NTIA. I'll say it's probably the best time in history to be the NTIA administrator. And we stand on the shoulders of giants, and that's the reason, of course, it is the reward for good work is more work, and that's what we've been given. It's a historic moment because we have been talking about the digital divide in this country for over 20 years, longer than that. Many of you have been part of that conversation for years. And thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, thanks to these other statutes, we have been finally given the resources to do something serious and structural about that. And that is huge, right? We've got $50 billion under management in grants at NTIA. There are other agencies, the FCC, USDA, Treasury, that are doing grant making. We're going to spend tens of billions of dollars in the coming years to make sure we meet President Biden's goal, making sure that everybody in America has high-speed, affordable, reliable internet service, and that we're not leaving anybody behind. And it's a lot of work. We had a lot of success last year. We put out our notices for funding. We gave out $1.7 billion in funding to tribal communities, the biggest investment, I think, in history in terms of tribe investments in Native community connectivity. We're going to give out another $1 billion in the coming year on tribal. So we're doing a lot already, and there's more to come. This year, we'll do $1 billion in the Middle Mile Fund. We have more tribal grants coming, and then these big state grants that people have been talking about, over $42 billion in our state grant connectivity program, the BEAD program, as some call it. And the action is about to turn to the states, and that's something for all of you where we're going to need help. The states are going to be developing their plans for how they will spend that $42 billion, and some states are in better shape than others. I think Colorado is a great state here. It's invested a lot in this. But making sure that those state plans come out right, that's where the action is going to be in the coming year and where we're really going to need attention. But I will say, I know this can be I don't want to say jaded audience or a cynical audience. Let's just say realistic audience. But, this is a kind of a once in a generation thing. I would say, there were generations before us that, brought electricity and water to everybody in America. They built the interstate highway system. This is our generation's big infrastructure project, right? This is our chance to connect everybody in the country with what they need to succeed and thrive in the digital economy, in this modern economy. And it's going to take us, it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take years to do it. But I do think that we will look back 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and say, this was the moment where we finally stepped up and connected everybody. And that's big.
That is big. Now that we're turning to the States, how should people think about engagement with these funds?
There's going to be, there are a lot of different pieces to it. There's digital equity work, which I think is going to be very important in making sure that we're reaching all of the communities and helping people, not just with connectivity, but with affordability, with devices, with skills. The big attention is going to be on these state plans. So state broadband offices are going to be working on their plans for how they will spend hundreds of millions. In some cases, it's going to be billions of dollars that states are going to be giving out to providers to connect everybody. So it's all hands on deck. It's making sure those plans look good. States are required to consult with local communities in their state. We're going to be holding their feet to the fire on that. So that's another opportunity to be engaged. Some of you work with providers or at providers who are going to be building these networks. We need you. We need you on the field. And so I just say this is a plea for help. This is a plea to engage. This is our moment. In the next few years, we will be spending this money. And if we're going to do it right, we need everybody, all of you, to be part of that conversation.
And then internally, you had to ramp up and staff up. Are you still hiring?
We are still hiring. If you know any good people, students, please keep us in mind for your post-graduation plans. We've grown a huge amount, and we have to grow more to do this work well. NTIA, I'm just had my 1-year anniversary at NTIA, so
happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's been a whirlwind. But since I joined on January 14th of last year, over a third of NTIA is brand new. So we've hired a third of NTIA since I joined in last year. And those of you who know anything about hiring government, that is kind of a miracle. We've worked really hard at it, but we still have a long, I don't say we have a long way to go, we still have a lot to do. I'm excited about the coming year because we've been building this huge program and we haven't had the resources. Now we finally have the staffing in place. And I think the next year, we're going to be doing even more. But we need to bring on more resources. We've got a lot of homework assignments from Congress. We're building out a new wireless innovation fund to think about Open RAN deployments. We're doing a lot of policy work, as I've described, and there's a huge amount to do in the broadband space. All of our spectrum work, we've got openings in all of the places, the Office of Spectrum Management, our Institute for Telecommunications Sciences here. So we need help, and we need more people in the field, which is why it's so important to be here with you all.
So everybody heard, get your resumes in.
Yes, yeah. Send them to Russ, send them to me. We have a lot of need.
Well, I absolutely sympathize. I know what it's like to try to stand up a program, and our program was more than 10 times smaller. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. And we're moving, it's like doing a startup in government, honestly, and which is exciting, but also terrifying. And I think the great thing about it is it's given us a chance to bring on a lot of great people, also build a culture, right? Which when you're building an organization, you can have a chance to impact the culture. And so I'm intensely proud of the people that we've been able to attract and the work that we've been able to do in this last year. And I'll just say this need for more engagement isn't just an NTIA thing. I think it's across government and really at all levels of government. I mean, part of what we need is more people to be in, these state broadband offices all need to staff up. The public interest groups and the philanthropies that are supporting work in this field, looking at our friends at Pew up there, everybody needs more capacity because of the resources that we're going to be pouring into this field in the coming years. So yes, please engage. We need the help.
All right, it's time to ask a student to ask us a question. Do we have a student? I see a hand.
Hi, my name is Isabel Dean. I'm a 2L at Colorado Law. My question is, about the Spectrum Coordination Initiative that was announced a year ago today. And I'm kind of wondering how those efforts have been realized over the past year, and how agencies can really align their efforts together to work towards closing the digital divide.
That's such a great question. And the funny thing is I could have spent the last 20 minutes talking about Spectrum, and I didn't, because it's sort of a sign of the times at NTIA that there's a lot going on. And of course, our Spectrum work is hugely important. We have this scarce resource that is becoming more and more valuable. And if we want to meet the needs of having the best wireless industry and technology in the world coming out of the United States, we need to be able to make sure that spectrum is available to power those networks. At the same time, we also have incredible needs from the our federal users and federal communities to defend the country, measure the weather, shoot down balloons, somebody is saying in the front row, right? do research on climate change. All of that relies on spectrum. So it's a huge amount of work at NTA on those issues. Out of our Office of Spectrum Management, we have this incredible sort of crown jewel of a lab here in Boulder at the Institute for Telecommunications Sciences, our facility out at Table Mountain. So there's a lot of work, but to do this right, it's all about coordination within the federal government and making sure that we are working together closely with the FCC and our sister agencies in making sure that we've got a vision of what we're trying to do as a country on spectrum, and that we're managing some of these live fire conflicts at times well together. And so we did, one of the first things that I did a year ago was to work with the FCC on a spectrum coordination initiative, as you said, and it's been going really well. It's made a huge difference already. I will say that the FCC chairwoman has been incredibly gracious, a great partner for me. She called me on my first day in the office. We spoke, and we probably not a week goes by that we're not in touch. And being able to work on that initiative was important to kick us off in the right way. Since then, we updated on an MOU between the FCC and NTIA that hadn't been updated in nearly 20 years. That was really important. And we're working together on a lot of different things, including getting ready to launch a big initiative on the national spectrum strategy. So all of this is a way of saying that coordination is really important, and so far so good.
Thank you. Thank you for that great question. I love a spectrum question.
Yeah.
Now, Blake, are you over there because it's time, or do we have time for one more question? We're out of time. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
So thank you, Administrator Davidson, for your thoughtful comments.
Thank you. And I'll just say one last thing, a plug again on the broadband side, and a plug again on building capacity here in the young people who are the students who are here, but really all of you. I think the biggest thing that we need is more people in government who are bilingual, who can understand the technology and understand the policy implications of what we're working on. And programs like Silicon Flatirons are critical in kind of building that capacity, and we need more of that in government. And if we're going to do things like make sure that we're connecting everybody in America, it's going to take all of you, and we want to be partners with you in that. So thank you.
Thank you.